Great, sure. So again, thanks a lot for having me here. My name is Andreas. I'm now 40 years old. I'm father of three. So actually we have got twins and one a little bit older one. I'm located in the south of Germany, in a city called Stuttgart. That's actually where I was born and also raised. And now I'm working at Exxeta, a technology consulting firm. I'm basically heading the SAP business at Exxeta. So that's probably why I'm here today. Um, yeah, maybe a brief overview about my career path. Actually, I studied business administration and economics, I think 20 years ago. During that time, I was always very technology affin. I really liked to work with computers, software, at that time. However, I decided to join a top management consultancy firm, actually from the US. I worked for AT Kearney, or nowadays they call it Kearney. It was my first job. I was traveling around the world, doing a lot of PowerPoint presentations, a lot of Excel analysis, worked for larger conglomerates like VW, Siemens, Bosch, and others, but also for smaller companies. Um, at that time, I was really focused on business impacts, always data-driven in most of my work. I had a lot of fun, learned a lot, but then my first daughter was born, and I decided to move on a little bit more on the customer side, where hopefully the work-life balance was a little bit better. So I joined in a bigger industrial company called Festo. It's also sitting in Germany, where I was basically part of the CFO organization. Later on, I was heading the group controlling and planning department. And at that time, I really got deep into financials, FP&L analysis, planning, finance systems, as well as SAP systems. At that time, I think we joined 60 ERP systems into three. We introduced data warehousing based on SAP BW. We introduced the planning software. That's where I really got in touch with SAP systems. And from there, basically, I joined Exxeta, where I'm sitting now, focusing again on SAP systems, but more on the BTP business today. I was founded, I think, in 2005. It's still led by our two founders, Andy and Achim. Exeter is a technology-focused consultancy firm. So we're doing everything that has technology in its heart, but not only implementation, but also the consulting, or the focus on consulting, actually. So Exeta's, I think when Exeta was founded, the focus was purely on software development, really highly customized software platforms, software pieces. So we've built big business portals for our customers, mobile apps. We have built our own IP. I think major parts of the European gas trading is basically happening on the Exeta platform. So everything that's around Java, .NET, ASP.NET, everything that's around in the market, that's the heritage of Exeta. And during that time, Exeta or the people at Exeta were working a lot in the agile manner and agile working mode. And now we're bringing agile as a working mode to customers is also part of our business. So we have a lot of transformation consultants focusing on introduction of SAFe, of Scrum, and other frameworks at our customer. And I think that's the heritage where Exeta stands from. So always having tech in mind, but always focus also on the market. Now, looking forward, you asked for goals. Exeta now has 1,200 employees, majority based in Germany, some in Switzerland. We also have an office in Bratislava. And I think that's a good mid-sized consulting firm. We are still a mid-sized consulting firm, not a big group, and also not a very small one. But I think the goal really now is to scale. I think we have basically every technology you want in our hands. We have a lot of expertise in all kinds of areas, but now we need to scale. We need to scale as a company, building platforms, building processes that scale, as well as really opening new offices, hiring talented people that want to join our journey. When I joined Exeta, I was far smaller, right? And probably all decisions were made by the founders or the top management. And now you need processes, right? And once you need processes, you always need to find a balance between very structured, very highly anticipated processes and a lot of liberty and freedom, actually, to have this entrepreneurial spirit, right? And you also need platforms. And that's, for example, also when I joined the company, we did a lot of evaluation. How can we scale our company? And we basically also ended up introducing SAP BTP actually at our company in almost every area, right? To integrate, scale integration, scale data analytics, scale our ERP systems as well. And it makes a lot of fun. And scaling also means scaling in terms of your portfolio, right? You basically you were focused, let's say, on purely software development. Now you need to find the right markets. Where do you want to do software development? With which kind of partners do you want to work together in order to do, for example, this kind of business? And then that's also the time where software partners like SAP or Microsoft or others are becoming more and more important for us as well. So Exxeta is still growing very strongly, as I said, still founder-led with a lot of spirit of freedom and liberty and autonomy. I think the people we hire usually have some kind of entrepreneurial spirit, not all of them, but I think that's something which you can basically find here at Exxeta, and that's what we're looking at, right? Is this someone who, for example, loves tech, who has really a lot of fun working in a specific technology, but does he already, or this person also know what can he do with this technology? What kind of consulting market lies there? How do I approach this consulting market? And that's something which we look at actually. It's not something everyone brings. Of course, you have, let's say, the typical developer persona at our company who's probably more a little bit introvert, working maybe in the code, loves coding, right? But there's also the other side where we focus on. Typically, I think if you look at Exxeta, people are very young. Since we are growing strongly, we have a lot of young people, and the team fit is very important for us. So I think if you meet other people than me from Exxeta, you probably notice that they are part of Exxeta. We are quite diverse, but somehow we are quite similar and quite hard to express this. It's also when I meet my alumni from Etikani, for example, I think they're somehow the same people, but still different. And I think the same is true for Exxeta. So typically, we have a standard process starting with a welcome day. That's probably the first day. Typically at Exxeta, people work mobilely. So we have 13 offices in Europe, 14 in Europe, but we are hiring all over the place. So if you are not close to the office, your first day probably is remote, actually. And you're taking part of a welcome day, which explains you the story, or it tells you the story of Exxeta. What is our focus? Who are the important people, the important processes, the places to go? That's part number one. And then we have in the so-called exploration workshops, 2 days on site. We really get, let's say, can experience the spirit, also introduce you a little bit more, build your first network. So typically these are events where you meet 20 to 30 people, and that's basically, these are your peers through the next 3 years of your career, right? The closest network you can get. And that's how it starts from a global perspective. So the core process. Typically, then the people join their teams, and within their teams, they, depending on the departments they're working at, they will probably face a different onboarding plan. First of all, I think in general, there are 2 career paths. One is if you work for the service industries like HR, recruiting, finance, sales, etc. So this is one career path, but probably we're now focusing more on the consulting path. So in consulting, you typically start as a consultant. The junior level at Exxeta is usually called associate consultant. That's where you start. This could be a role as a developer, as an agile consultant, as, let's say, UX, UI design. So we're doing a lot of things here as well. Or maybe a methodology consultant telling people about Scrum, SAFe, etc. So this is the role, and it's usually called associate consultant. From there, you probably evaluate, become a consultant after a year, maybe a senior consultant after 2 or 3 years further on. And I think this is typically the point where career paths split. So at Exxeta, we have, of course, a typical disciplinary management career. So if you would become a manager or senior manager, building up a team, building up a portfolio, being responsible for the team and the career development of your team, but also being responsible for the market success. So in terms of P&L, you don't only have a cost information, you also need to take care about revenue you're basically generating in the market as a consultant. So from a senior, you could become a manager, senior manager, and then becoming a director like I am. And you're responsible for some kind of business part in the market, right? In my term, it's SAP. We also have directors who are responsible for the mobile app development and others as well. This is one, and I think that's a classical career path. But nowadays, I think this is not really coping 100% of the career plans of our young people. So besides the typical manager track, we also have, let's say, the business or professional track. So you could still reach the same salary level, the same responsibility without heading a disciplinary team. So typically, for example, in software development, you would become some kind of architect or senior architect, enterprise architect, and would also basically then grow or, let's say, make step ups in the career ladder. So if you look from a management perspective at Exxeta, maybe that's also something that's from a cultural perspective important. We do not have very strong management organization in terms of responsibility. It's more like we are more organized in communities. And if you are focusing, let's say, on the professional track, becoming, let's say, a senior lead, as we call them, for, let's say, agile methodologies, you would probably head a community and bringing input to the people, organizing the people, educating the people, training the people that they really can make their jobs, their daily jobs better, right? Without having the need to be the disciplinary responsible person for this team. As I did, let's call them brainwash sessions at the beginning, right? The welcome day and the exploration workshop. But then there is a structured development plan, as said, which differs by department, but basically includes the similar elements, right? We have an Exxeta Academy, we call that, which includes a lot of soft skill trainings. So usually also if you make career progressions, you need to have some mandatory trainings in advance or successfully participated in advance to make this progression. Presentation skills, how do I write proposals, how do I present myself, etc. All these soft skill trainings. And then there's a large catalog and training opportunities for technologies, right? So we have the Angular Academy from 1 to 3. We have SAP academies, which are usually held internally. So the employees of Exxeta are basically the trainers. We also hire, especially in the soft skill area, we also hire external experts. And then we have on-demand service as well. Like, for example, SAP Learning, of course, is available to our employees. But we also offer access to other platforms like Pluralsight, which give you a general oversight about all kinds of technology skills, like what is a REST API, right? What is Kubernetes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So what is surprising? I think, as said, people are very like-minded, etc., but still very diverse in terms of what is their scientific background, where do they come from, how did they used to work. There are a lot of people who are also joined Exxeta on a senior level, so it's not only not everyone is homegrown, let's say. And diversity of people, I think, is very interesting in Exxeta. If you start, for example, in our German offices, like I did in Stuttgart, I think in Stuttgart we are 230 people roughly. You wouldn't guess that they all work for the same company just by how they appear, what they talk about, what are their hobbies, right? They're people with 5 kids. They're really sport enthusiasts, right? People who barely spoke German when they joined here and now speak German. It's very diverse. You will find people studying economics, biology, right? Of course, information science, a lot of things. But I think diversity, I think things you would notice probably in the first few days once you join. But then I think what you also would see is that tech is everywhere. So people like to play around with tech, all kind of technology. It's lying around in terms of hardware. In terms of software, you will probably notice that almost everything is available if you need it. So if you really love to explore or to try out new things, then you will notice that you will always find a community, as told before, that's already, or that's at least willing to work on this. For example, AI, of course, is a big topic right now, right? We had a small community focusing on AI, and they really pushed forward in the topic. And now I think after a few months, we ended up building our own AI Exxeta platform, which we can also offer to the market. People are working on plenty of AI use cases. I think this is something special at Exxeta. When I used to work, for example, in the industry before, of course, this was something totally different. Strong processes, strong departments, right? You needed to ask for budget. Of course, this is very different here at Exeter. The traditions are very different at different offices.
Sure.
But I think if you look around, we have a lot of bike fanatics or biking fanatics here. They really love to go biking. So I think in 2 weeks from now, so after Easter, I'm not sure when you send this out. In 2 weeks from now, there would be a big bike trip. So usually you're just heading for 80 kilometers and driving around with the bikes in all kinds of levels. There are people who are doing the race across America. Once a year, there are people like me who are basically already done after 30 kilometers. But I think everything around biking is really something I enjoy because I really love to do it, especially graveling. I think last year we did a tour to Montenegro, which is in the south of Europe, a small country with a lot of hills and a lot of big history from the Romans. And these are things which are organized, let's say, centrally by the company, and that's something I really enjoy. I'm doing this with all the other team members here from my office. So how do we build trust was a question. I think that's something which became a little bit more complicated since the pandemic, actually. I think all the companies are basically facing the same problem once they start working remotely, like we still do. For us, it's very important to have this kind of offering. Our people, as said already, are working from everywhere around Europe. And building trust in this kind of remote relationship is quite complicated. So for us, it's important to build some kind of implicit experiences, something you can rely on in order to predict how someone behaves, actually. And this is something you can hardly build now via Teams or Zoom. Our approach is really having these kind of physical events, physical happenings where you can meet people, which could be a fun event like our big summer events, which we always do once a year. Could be our office events. For example, we have a bi-weekly office breakfast in Stuttgart. Other offices are doing differently, but it's also about working together in workshops or at the client side as well. I think that's the only way to build trust. But it is and remains difficult. And I think nowadays an employer is a little bit more exchangeable than before. Probably it's something everyone experiences. People are more willing to join other companies to seek for their career path, but also to leave other companies. And I think we have found a good way how to work with this kind of remote work. But personally, I think it's still more challenging than it was before the pandemic. I think just switch to position right now. How do we basically look for employees, and what are our job offerings on a website for, right? For us, it's the way to somehow describe who we are looking for. But if I do, let's say, do a job posting on our website, for me, it's quite hard to find the right buzzwords. So hopefully, and luckily, I found the right buzzwords to find the right candidate. But I'm also, let's say, only 60% sure that I selected the right buzzwords. And probably for the candidate, it's the same, right? You read through the job posting and say, well, 60% of the buzzwords I have a perfect fit. For the other 40%, I won't. And my answer to this is really, I think it's better to apply for a position and then get into talks and discuss it a little bit. Spend some time and invest the time also for the to get some feedback on the personal fit as well before not applying. If you look through or scroll through these job offerings, you wouldn't find any required certificates or anything. That's not part of the way how we basically look for candidates. There are a few things which are probably important. One is, yes, we are a technology company. You probably won't find any job offering without a link to some kind of technology background, something that should be in your CV. Although we are based in Central Europe with offices in Germany, Switzerland, Slovakia, and Serbia, I think speaking German at a profound level, let's say B2, better C1, is something that's really required at our company, not because of our company, but because of our clients who typically prefer to speak German with us instead of switching purely to English. But the rest is really, I think I could recommend to everyone, look for the right offering which comes closest to your personal expectations. And if there's nothing, I think there's always a free one, right? You can just apply and tell, okay, this is my CV, where do I fit best? And I think that's still better than doing nothing. We basically work for all kinds of industries, let's say automotive, or how we call mobility, retail, energy, public, financial services, consumer goods, oil and gas, you name it. You would probably find every industry segment within our client portfolio. However, mobility, so automotive, discrete manufacturing, all the suppliers is probably the biggest part of our customer share. Of course, German-based. This is also part of the biggest part of the German industry. The second biggest industry we work for is probably the energy market. As said, we also have our own IP in gas trading, or let's say stock market evaluation with the EEX. And this is also a big part where we focus on this industry. We also work a lot in the financial service industry. But we do a lot of industry consulting, so regulatory consulting with relation to tech. However, we are really keen on expanding everywhere. So public is a big topic nowadays, also for us. But personally, I think looking at the market, also how the markets change in Europe, industry is good, but professional service strongly grow compared to industry goods. So this is something, if someone is interested, let's say, on building a portfolio in the travel logistics market, I think he or she is really highly welcome to join us and to help us to build, let's say, more clients in this kind of industry segment. Maybe also interesting, I think before the pandemic, of course, we were also some kind of nomads traveling to our clients at that point of time, right? So the location of the clients mattered. Nowadays, traveling has become less important. So it doesn't really matter where the clients sit. I think if there's a fit, right, and if the language fits somehow, right, really depending on the countries, we can basically serve any kind of client in any kind of country in Europe. But as said, I think majority of our customers will probably still have some kind of base in Germany, and then probably will have some subsidiaries somewhere in Europe. So I think the SAP story at Exxeta is a little bit different than it's probably what you would expect from a typical SAP partner in the market. Why? Because Exxeta's heritage is not in the classical SAP ERP market. So we have no ERP business right now, and we're also not introducing, let's say, SAP SuccessFactors or Ariba or anything else. We are coming from the solution business, looking at what is the client's needs and then building something with Java or anything else. And that's how we also approach SAP. So SAP BTP, the technology platform, is basically for us just a foundation for building great solutions, right? For analytics, for integration, for apps, extension, etc. And that's how we look actually at the market. And looking from that perspective, of course, we have the freedom also to work with other tools than only SAP tools. But now, once we want to work with SAP BTP tools, I think our approach is a bit unique since we are only looking at the solution and not trying to sell one kind of SAP service. And if someone wants to work for Exxeta in the SAP BTP area, I can just basically motivate this person to do so. You will probably find that we have been one of the first, actually, at least in the German market, investing into BTP. Personally, I started working with the HANA Cloud Platform, aka SAP Cloud Platform, aka SAP BTP. I've reintroduced SAP Analytics Cloud since its beginning, SAP Data Warehouse Cloud, aka SAP DataSphere. And it makes a lot of fun also seeing a lot of new joiners now taking up this knowledge, bringing it to the market. And it also makes a lot of fun to see how the maturity rates basically of the solution. And people who worked at Exxeta in this market probably can benefit from this experience since we do this since, I don't know, 5 years already with BTP or aka SCP. This is something probably unique in the market, at least in the German market as well. So,
Okay.
yeah. So one of our success stories actually is a client of the discrete manufacturing business. So they are basically producing a lot of stuff you would probably then build into your production line or machinery. They are 1 billion in size in terms of revenue and probably roughly 5,000 employees. And before we actually joined collaborating with them, they had probably no data analytics in place. They were dependent on an external vendor who basically were running their SAP business warehouse and their SAP business objects instances for them. They had no access to these kinds of software. They just asked them, can you build me a report? And they provided a report, let's say, after 4 and 8 weeks. And since the time to value was very slow, and the technology was also very old, no one really used analytics. And I think it was actually a journey we started in 2020 when we discussed strategically what is the next step. So how can we really scale data analytics within a company to become a data-driven business? I know it's a big buzzword, but in this now it really fits. And they were one of the first customers that actually were willing to go on SAP Data Warehouse Cloud, aka SAP Datasphere. And we started a SAP Datasphere journey together in 2021. Introduced SAP Datasphere, introduced SAP Analytics Cloud for reporting, SAP Analytics Cloud for planning, SAP Integration Suite also for some data handling. And after 2 years, almost 2 years, we probably made a cut and looked at what have we achieved. And coming from no users for data analytics, we ended up with more than 700 BI users, looking at business intelligence, with more than 2,000 dashboards. Self-service was really fostered in the organization, all kinds of legal entities and business departments. Of course, 2,000 dashboards means also some redundant dashboards. So probably the governance could be a little bit tightened up now. But what I think the success is really to make this data-driven, really achieve this data-drivenness, let's say, in the company. And while this was a technology implementation, on one hand, introducing DataSphere, SAP SAC, etc., it was really about building the organization on top, right? So enabling a specific part of the organization to make the lead, to do the architecture, to push forward, to handle us, for example, as external consultants. But then also building self-service communities, educating, training all the people in all business departments. And this makes me really proud how we basically achieved to work together with this client and what they achieved and how they became data-driven. And I think this is also the specific thing about Exxeta. It's always about technology, but not only implementing. It's about really making the change. And I think this is one of my loveliest clients. Actually, it's also very close to where I live. And that makes me also very happy because sometimes you meet someone in the market and then they recognize you and tell, you are the guy who introduced our data analytics. So this makes me also proud.